Hey YouTube, this is episode 2 of Better Than Stock. So let's talk about the mid-range brakes for Gbody. This is rear disc setup. This is from a 98 to 02 Camaro Firebird. So they call this the LS1 style rear disc. Now this fits perfect on a Gbody. Now if you look, this does require longer wheel studs like the first one we talked about in the entry brakes. Now on this setup from the factory, these brakes are usually facing right here on the Camaro. We have to flip the whole backing plate and everything for clearance because of the frame. You have to put it right here. So this is actually the passenger side backing plate, and the one on the passenger side is actually the driver's side. So that's one thing to think about when you're doing this. Now you can use this setup, or you can use the S10 Blazer setup. The LS1's style is bigger rotor, but the S10 Blazer works too. It's just a smaller rotor. So it's just something to think about while you're doing it. Now both the S10 Blazer or the LS1 style brakes do require cutting and modification of the axle flange. They call this a Chevy axle flange pattern, which is 4 bolts. To make this work on a Gbody, you do have to cut the top half of the flange, so you have to use a grinder or reciprocating saw, whatever works for you, to get the top section right where my fingers are at. Get that gone to square it off for this to work. Or, like in my case, get a Ford 9-inch with Chevy ends and it fixes your issue. Another thing, for clearance, like right here, it requires relocating the rear shock. So this is a bare rear shock bracket, and it moves this towards the center of the rear end to make some extra room. See how here's the factory bolt hole right here, which that would have made contact with the rear disc setup and the tire, versus this one fixes it. Oh, and another thing while you're down here, for the guys that want rear parking brakes, also while you're down here, to run rear brakes, if you just get a Gbody front brake hose, caliper hose, it works great. Go to the junkyard, get your backing plate, caliper bracket, bolts, and if you want, get a rotor from the junkyard. But buy this new, and then get your relocation bracket, and then you're good to go. One rear brakes, and this part plus this, which all you need out of that package is this, to get your emergency brake cable to work on the rear disc brakes from an LS1 on your Gbody. To show you how that mounts, okay, so we're going to use this 2-inch drop spindle from a S10 Blazer to use as a mock-up to show you how it mounts. You can use this setup too for your Gbody instead of using a factory style S10 Blazer spindle. Now obviously you'll need a hub because this is missing one at the moment. Now the first thing is, because you're doing big brakes, you need longer studs. That's the first thing, which here's the information you need. This is a Dorman box. You're going to need 10 of those. And if you buy this kit, which I also put in the description, you use this adapter and it mounts right there. So see how it's, I don't have it tight, but if you look right there, see it hits. See, you have some clearance issues. And if you look close enough, I made a mark. So there's a black mark where I need to shave some. And then there's also a black mark right here. So that shows what needs to be shaved for this to fit properly. And then this is with it slightly mounted because see, it won't fit properly. But this, you can use a C5 or C6 dual piston caliper. Now you do have to use the brackets and the caliper, so this is out of a C5 because of the lettering is smaller. Now on the C6, these ribs are going to be smoothed. On the C5, it's ribbed like this. So that's how you'll be able to tell the difference, and the lettering is a little bit different. But it works great on your S10 Blazer. And then if you buy the adapter for the caliper, you get some shims for it, depending on how much you need behind the hub. You get a bag of hardware and everything. And then for me, for the rotor, because this is going to be more like a daily, I'm going to just use a standard GM 13-inch brake rotor. And the Advantage, which I think is just your standard, it was the cheapest brake rotor at the time. Now this will make your car drive way better than your stock brakes. Now this does have a requirement, like the last video I talked about where it had a 15-inch wheel or bigger. This has a 17-inch or bigger for the front. And then if you do just the LS1 rear brakes, you can use 16-inch wheels minimum for the rear, preferably 17s. 16s clear, fine, but if you're going to do the C5 or C6 front brakes, you really need to make everything match, so you need 17s for the front and back. So that should get you your front brakes, your rear brakes. I went over all the parts except for two. So let me show you those last two things and we'll finish this video. Now the last thing I didn't talk about on the other video, but I put it in the comments, is master cylinder. Now obviously this is not a stock Gbody master cylinder. This one is a 79 to 85 Cadillac Eldorado master cylinder. And because of that, it gives you the right valving inside here. So when you push the brake pedal, you actually will get a hard or a normal pedal. So if you're doing rear brakes only, you need this. If you're doing big brakes and rear disc, you need this. So that's the part that you need the most for all these brake systems. And then the last piece of the puzzle, the stock Gbody one, which won't work if you do rear disc brake setup. The replacement is right up there. Right there is a Cadillac Eldorado. Right there. So mounts the same, everything, all the brake lines are in the same spot. So it shows you the one you need. Okay, so I hope showing you these parts and what you need to get your rear disc set up, if you want the bigger rear disc from the LS1 rear disc setup, or if you want the C5 C6 brake setup on your S10 Blazer spindles. I hope this was helped you out to get your project one step closer to being a fun experience. If it did and it brought value, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.